the FNL Network talk show.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the FNL talk show. It's me as the token male and three beauties. Everybody changed their hair but me. Next time, I'm wearing a wig, darn it. So, hello, ladies. We got the Marianne, better than Ginger. How are you, ladies?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm at Disney World. Who could want anything better? Or virtual?
It's raining in LA, guys. I'm so done. It was snowing. Now it's raining.
Oh.
I'm like, where is the sun that I moved to?
I think it's the Book of Revelations. What about you, Bettina? How are you?
Good. It's a little snowy up here in New York, and I got a little puppy that's trying to bite the wall.
Aw.
He's very involved in pulling the wall apart. So he's, tasty awards.
The wall, just like we won the Taste Awards, which none of us were able to make. So we don't have that much to say, but I think we won the talk show. So let's hear it for us. Woo! Round of applause for ourselves. Why not? Because if you can't love yourself, somebody else. That's all I'm saying. So it's award season. The Oscars were just on. Lots to maybe discuss about it. Pre-Oscars, Chris Rock, finally addressed the infamous slap. Did anybody watch his special on Netflix?
Yep.
And what did you all think? Whoever would like to start, cool by me. Eugenia, Bettina?
Fine. Yeah, I know you're going to start with me because I literally live in this town, It was funny. I was supposed to go to London, do a play and hopefully escape the Oscars, but then the director got COVID. So I stayed for the Oscars and I was watching, before going to all the, events, I was watching Chris Rock special just to calm down because you need some reality in this town. And, I sympathize with comedians these days. It's impossible not to be canceled. So I think it's a legitimate joke just about hey, I think it's really hard. Everybody's so sensitive these days and comedians on all kind of levels, they get canceled. So I think he brought a point of awareness to that. I honestly, I don't know what to say. I decided not to go to the awards. Even though with, Miramax, we get invited to everything, I just decided my kids are more important because, I was talking to somebody here and they said how much the film industry changed just because it's going to the, AI kind of gaming thing. And now they don't even invite a lot of movie stars. There's no such term. There's a lot of influencers running around, taking selfies. It's a very different game. The Oscars is not what it used to be. It used to be very much about storytelling and, you have to roll with the changes, of course. But I think Chris Rock did a solid point on that. I think it's a joke. The whole Oscar thing is who cares? There are wars, there's starving children, there's earthquake in Turkey and Syria. There are problems that if you don't spend money creating the Oscars and traffic in the freaking LA, you can feed the homeless here. You know what I mean? For me, it's a little bit outdated. To be honest, I love movies. Don't get me wrong. I love storytelling. I think it unites us as people. There's beauty. And there were beautiful parts in the Oscars, the beautiful thing about the actor, who got the supporting award and how he shouted to his mom and he could never be included. I think that was stunningly beautiful and authentic, but there's so much hypocrisy as well about Hollywood. The nepotism, is the biggest in this industry. For somebody to make it who's just talented from the streets, hello, it's almost impossible, let's be honest. And, just they're being part of the awards and okay, now you can go because your husband runs Miramax and before you can't go because no matter how hard you work as an actor, you don't matter. It's really social climbing and everybody's jealous of each other. And then now everybody's checking Instagram the next day. I think, I would prefer watching Chris Rock in my bathroom rather than going anywhere. That's the bottom part of it. And I think we're all valuable, just the fact that there is an award that makes one, artist better than the other. it doesn't make sense to me because art is very subjective and it becomes very political and used for the wrong reasons.
Well, Eugenia, if your husband has a brother or a cousin who's gay, I would be very happy to go to the Oscars and leave the homeless people of LA and get a $20,000 gift bag. So feel free to pick me out, at any point. God bless your moral standing. I don't have it, but I do appreciate yours. So that's all I have to say to that. What about you, ladies, Marianne and Bettina? What did you get out of the Oscars or Chris Rock beforehand? Any highlights, lowlights? What do you think?
So I actually did not watch. I haven't had a chance to watch the special on Netflix yet. I will say, Eugenia, I think you brought up a fantastic point that there are so many other valuable things that they could be doing, other, people that they could be helping. It's not to dismiss the Oscars. My favorite part was Brendan Fraser getting his Oscar because he's been kind of out of the spotlight for a while. And now I think I haven't seen the movie, but I know what it's about. And the fact that, he's been out for a while and he got that award, I thought that was very touching. And I also love the storyline. But as far as, the importance of it, again, Eugenia brought up really good points about people competing with each other. People, there's probably so much that goes on behind the scenes. And it makes me wonder, how kind are people to one another behind all the glitz and glamour, behind everything that you're seeing? How do they treat each other? I think that's what's important.
Shoot them.
Yeah, it is important. How do they treat each other? And another thing that you mentioned, Eugenia, I know I keep agreeing with what you're saying, but you brought up such good points, is what about actual talent? Are they recognizing real talent for everybody, or is some of it people that just climb their way there the wrong way? I know there's a lot of talent out there, but I do feel there's probably a lot of actors that are super talented that may not be as recognized as they should.
Well, Marianne, I was rooting for Brendan too. And I was really happy, when he won. But I thought his speech was kind of crazy because he kept making all these whale references. I was like, okay, 2 people saw your movie. I'm sorry about that. But you're like, oh, they were my lifeline, taking me up for air like a whale. He looked different out of the makeup than he did in the makeup. He didn't really hold up well. God bless. You're no longer Encino Man. You are a little bit whalish, man. So, I'm glad he won. But, I'm glad he had a comeback. But the other thing, the whole theme, we're all like, oh, the underdogs all won. They've all been stars since childhood. So how are they an underdog? So Jamie Lee Curtis went from being stabbed to getting an Oscar, but she's been around for years. The guy who won Best Supporting Actor, he started with Indiana Jones. Okay, so maybe he struggled on a refugee trip, up to 9 months old. Since then, he was doing pretty good. So, it's hard to be like, oh my goodness, these poor struggling people, like they weren't maybe accoladed, but they had great careers up until this evening. Even, the woman who won for Best Actress, she mentioned she was a star in Hong Kong before coming here. So she wasn't really sacrificing either. I celebrate diversity. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad, Brendan continues to work. I love Darren Aronofsky. It makes me want to see The Whale even more. I hated his speech, Brendan's. But, those were some of my takeaways. What about you, Bettina?
Yeah, I had so many different opinions on that were like everything, everywhere, all at once.
Not having it. I haven't seen it yet.
That movie, I actually didn't understand it. I was like, what the hell is with this movie? It just kept jumping from story to story. But I am glad that they had someone Asian win for a change. Like, that was nice. So, like, on the one hand, I don't believe in competition. Like, for me, I think it should be like, these are 10 great movies and leave it at that. Like, why should we be competing against each other? I didn't really love any of the movies other than I was on the SAG nominating committee this year. So I think I watched every movie that was possibly made. I saw just about everything. If I had to choose a favorite, it would be Tar, because Kate Blanchett is probably my favorite actress, and she's amazing. And that movie was great. As for The Whale, I just think Hollywood likes to reward like things that look like big physical changes because they don't know how to judge like real acting talent. So it's like put him on a fat suit and like that's obvious, like a big change. So I think that's why he won, because they're kind of judging things like it's a sports team, you know, which is a sports team has very specific ideals. Like he got 4 hits and he got 6 hits, and it's very specific. But acting and creativity, you shouldn't really be able to judge like that, you know. I mean, also, I'm happy that some older ladies won, you know, in that category, because I'm still working actress and I aspire to be more well-known. And, you know, that always feels good, even though they have been working their entire life, you know. So it's, you know, it's like on one hand, on the other hand, like that kind of thing. Now, I did see the Chris Rock thing, which I enjoyed. I thought the whole thing was entertaining, but I don't think it was as cutting or as biting like as it could be, or what he usually does. I mean, he definitely like talked about the slap a little bit. I mean, a little bit at the beginning, a little bit in the middle, like just to show like I'm going to talk about this. And then a little bit at the end, you know, he just basically refuses to be a victim, was basically his theme, and he doesn't want to fight in front of white people. And that was like his main thing. And then some other little jokes that seemed a little more like fillers, like some jokes about Lululemon, like the yoga pants, how expensive they were, and how, you know, just some little jokes. I thought that he is a lot more smarter and a lot more, had much more of an ability to do something even better or more interesting. I'm not saying I wasn't entertained, but I think I've seen him be like much better. So I don't know. That's a lot of stuff there.
I loved his joke about Meghan Markle being surprised that the royal family was racist. He's like, they're the original racist. Like they created.
That was great. I didn't know.
I can't believe Oprah that they're racist. He's like, how can you not know? I really love that. I
love that. They started racism, basically.
It's like, how did you miss this, Megan? So I really love that part of it.
That was funny. I like that a lot too, actually.
You guys, to add, they didn't include some people in the memoriam, like Anne Hatch, you know. I was really shocked. Like, okay, Travolta crying. Okay, he can cry. He's an actor, right? Like that part, I don't know if you watched, but there are a couple of actors like Paul Sorvino.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was shocked, you know.
Tom Sizemore, they didn't mention.
Yes, I know. Well, these 3 actors, like exactly, like, you know, the acting community who actually works is devastated by that, because, you know, and I don't know why. Is it because the circumstances by which they died? But then it brings another thing to like, the industry can be so abusive that people end up being, you know, addicted to something and just being in pain, not being recognized. And it's like a toxic circle of, okay, I got an Oscar, and then it creates a resentment. And, you know, it creates all this pain where then these people who are suffering from not being recognized just, you know, get addicted to things because they're trying to deal with the pain. So I think there's so many important things. And also my manager said, never slip your way to the middle, which I totally did, being married to my husband, but you know,
okay.
But
you know, for Weinstein, clearly he was popular. I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, that's a different conversation. I grew up around Harvey, and that we can, you know, I was gonna make jokes about that, but then I was told never, I'm gonna work in this business again. So, you know, that opens a can of worms. And Sharon Stone did an amazing actually article as well. I don't know, it brings so many things, you know, all small things about Hollywood that I think are coming up to the surface, and maybe thanks to social media, but are also very painful. And for many artists, you know, I think working talented artists, I just feel for them.
Well, to me, it just seems like high school for adults, which is a lot of life, you know, where it's all a popularity contest. So it's like, you know, if she didn't marry Michael Douglas, would Catherine Zeta-Jones have ever won an Oscar? I mean, she was good in Chicago, but that's the only time she can show her skill set properly in a movie. So, and it's the only time we've really seen it, other than maybe Traffic. She had a little acting to do, and that's it, you know. But I mean, it's like a one-hit wonder. And I think it's all like who you marry, how you're. Nicole Kidman, her face hasn't moved in 20 years. Why is she still winning awards? I mean, maybe because she had a contract with Tom Cruise. I mean, speaking of which, why was Maverick nominated? Because maybe they were hoping more people would watch this year. Same with Avatar. And, of course, Tom Cruise didn't show up. James Cameron didn't show up. I don't know if the ratings were any better because they nominated more popular films or not. Does anyone know if the ratings were actually better this year than in the past?
They were worse.
Oh, really?
My
Okay.
favorite was Lady Gaga singing. That was so beautiful.
She
No
was great.
makeup, t-shirt and jeans, and a voice that was just, wow.
A lot of people misunderstood her in the industry. They're like, her makeup artist was like screaming, and I'm like, I so identify with you because I think it was a very specific choice.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, and it's easy to judge like, oh, where was her makeup? But I feel like she really went to authenticity of that song. And I don't think you can sing about pain with all the makeup.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, and she has so much talent and she can really sing. And so she doesn't need to have all the meat dressing anymore. So like why? Just sing like that's your talent. You use it like that. It doesn't need, a lot of insane makeup, which is what she did to get noticed, but it's not necessary.
But she showed up looking like Black Swan. I mean, she had very strong makeup on, a very dramatic dress. And then all of a sudden she's like, but I'm one of you, America. I'm in a t-shirt. Let me sing.
Right.
So I don't know. I thought she nailed the song, but I didn't think the song itself is that powerful. I think she's better than the song was, personally. That's my takeaway on it. But, but I loved her. I mean, I thought she did really good. So that's kind of like, how I was feeling about that. On the news, like all the time now, we see about all these people going postal and going crazy and, gun shots being fired in the most random places, schools. And then just this past week, it was on the news that some Southwest passenger, he was bumped into by another guy, his family was bumped into. So I don't know if it was kids, a wife, whoever. And then he goes and pummels the guy. And then they're both removed. Now, I never saw the full tape. So I don't know what the guy did to instigate this. I don't know, if the guy who was pummeled deserved to also be removed. But it seems like people are angrier, than ever. How do we deal with a society that's angry? Do we just like walk on eggshells? Do we have to be extra cautious? One of the jobs I do is as a spokesperson in the automotive industry, and I never used to, but now when I get to like a convention hall, I look for where the emergency exits are in case a crazy person comes that I can get out, but I never used to do that. I mean, and it's just a crazy state of mind to have to think, well, what do I do in case something goes down? And, at the Chicago International Auto Show, supposedly 2 people were caught with weapons and luckily nothing did happen. So how do you ladies navigate through this world? Do you think people are more on edge? Are they angrier? Is it the price of things? What created this?
I do. Oh, go ahead, Bettina.
You want to go first? It's okay. You want me to go first? All right.
I don't mind.
Okay, well, I think this all has to do with Trump, and all the MAGA hats. He made violence okay. So maybe in the past, people who were violent were kind of hidden behind the bushes, but this idiot comes out and is like, I hate, I'm racist, let's kill all the, people who aren't like me. And that made all the people who may have had some racist feelings or feeling some anger that felt they had to hide themselves, be like, it's okay to hate and kill people. And that's what happened. That's a societal rage that this one man created. Like, you can never say that one man does not have a big influence, but that's what happened. He just let all the crazies out of the box and it just influenced our entire society. I mean, I also believe there was some influence by like Russians, like getting on Facebook, those bots, how like sometimes you're on Facebook and like all of a sudden you're arguing with people, and that helped like really divide the society into, 2 like opposing viewpoints, that they just can't see eye to eye. So that was, we were being interfered with, and people who maybe don't have a brain don't know how to be discerning about things, and they just let themselves be brainwashed into thinking all kinds of crazy stuff. And next thing you know, you're arguing with your friend, your neighbor, your family member. So all those things we were being influenced in a certain way. So I think the best thing to do is to have love in your heart, or as much as you can, to appreciate things, to forgive yourself and to forgive others, and to go around with a full heart of peace and love. And that, I feel, is the a way to be healing society.
I half agree with you on that one, Bettina, because I feel that Trump caught on to an undercurrent that was already there. I think it was a symptom, and he brought it out and he encouraged it, and maybe, like separated more people with like racism and other divides and gave permission for that. As far as the extreme violence and guns and this and the other, I don't blame him necessarily for that. I think he's more of a symptom of where society was. And that's why he even became president, because people liked his anger. They related to it. And it was already there. He just was somebody who fed on that current. So I was just kind of curious, like, where that current came from. And other than like, being as loving as we can and self-aware, what do we do now? What would you like to say, Marianne?
I think we have very much become a like me society. Like everybody is out for themselves. People aren't thinking about other people anymore. And I think it's getting worse. And Bettina brought up some really good points. A lot of times when you see somebody that's in charge acting a certain way, you may think it's okay. And, for me, I try to always remember, and I fail at this, I'm not perfect, but I try to always remember that you never really know what another person's going through, and what you say could make or break that person's day. It could be it even could be something, the difference between life and death. You don't know if that person is suicidal, and there's a one final straw that breaks the camel's back, and they go home and they do something irreversible. So I agree that people in our society, they're so angry. They are filled with anger. They are filled with hatred. They're filled with rage. And a lot of people, especially where I live, because I'm in North Carolina, I am in the Bible Belt. I deal with so many people who are closed-minded, bigoted, cruel, racist, and I am the opposite. Like, I don't like that way of thinking, and I step on people's toes. And the older I get, the more vocal I am about my beliefs that you are not going to treat people who are different than the way you were raised poorly. And I'm not going to stand for it. I don't care if you're family. I don't care if you're in-laws. I don't care if you're friends. You're not going to do that in my presence, or I'm leaving. And that's the thing. I see so much of it here in the South. And while I love some aspects of the South, I hate that part. I hate it. People going to church and then saying, well, you're not welcome here if you're gay, or you're not welcome here if you're an interracial couple. I mean, I see stuff that you wouldn't even imagine, and it floors me. And I think there's narcissism at the center of a lot of that. And I cannot stand it. My husband knows it. My bonus daughter knows it. My animals probably know it. I will not put up with it. And I think the anger and the rage has spilled over into a lot of different places, whether it's being discriminatory against somebody, or whether it's just somebody that's out for themselves and doesn't want to think about other people, or the underdog. That's another big deal to me, is people that are shunned, people that are marginalized. I don't like them being marginalized and left out. So I think another thing that we can do is, if we see somebody that's left out, try and welcome them, try and make them feel seen. Because at the end of the day, like I said, you never know what they're dealing with. And you could be the one person that makes or breaks their life by just your words and your actions.
Beautiful, and I fully agree. Eugenia, I'm curious about you, especially with being a parent in a large city. Like, what do you say to your kids going to school? Because I think even if you're in private school, it doesn't mean you don't have a crazy kid. They could be in public, they could be in private, they could be anywhere. How do you combat this? What are your thoughts about, how society is today as far as anger and danger? And what do you tell your kids about this? And how do you try to keep them safe?
Well, let me tell you a perspective from somebody who was born in Russia, who is not political at all, who's a humanitarian. It's an interesting thing just to kind of migrate through all these cultures and, be kind of like a witness to a lot of things. And, there's one thing is people who are suffering. Another thing, people who create wars on both sides and sell arms and make money on that. So maybe they don't want to stop a war on any side, and there's so much motives. So I think, Hollywood breeds a lot of violence. A lot of times people say, when you get an audience under the belt, and that's literally how you access the money, because people want something where they feel something in their gut, so a lot of movies, they start violence, and no wonder you have all the shootings after people watch The Joker, and the way things portrayed is so subconscious. And let's just think in a bigger picture. I think you guys, computers are going to replace humans. I'm sorry, might replace.
Right.
I don't know. That's just my idea. And they might treat us like animals. And let's just look how we treat animals. We're not very kind. We use them for profit. And, I read this book, this amazing philosopher. This book is called Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. He's kind of like a futurist. I have an instinct like you do about, there's so much anger, and I do my research, like, why is that? I try to analyze from critical thinking. I think critical thinking is something that we're losing a lot of times, just being so divided. And I think there is an agenda of like, okay, 1% of population, look at the economy and all the collapse, and the bank collapse in Silicon Valley, even though the Uncle Sam, as I heard from my friends in Silicon Valley, will save them, still is a big, anxiety for people to read those news that the banks are collapsing, interest rates are rising, there's no food shortage. And, we just all are dehumanized in so many ways. There are things, of course, that can be brought up to the surface, and I think it's a collective. I don't think one politician or the other can start it. I think there's so much behind the face that we don't know. There's so much agenda, but, I definitely looking at all this cryptocurrency that's collapsing, the banking system that's collapsing. You're better being in some community far, far away in New Zealand, raising your own farm, than being around animals, I guess, than being around robots. I have people who are telling me, I'm writing a poetry book, they're like, AI writes poetry, and now AI does everything, and we don't need you, and that creates anxiety. Let's see, it's our survival. I think on some gut level, we really feel that, unless we just change our thinking, which I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if I'm a positive thinker. I want to be a positive thinker, but looking at where the world is now, I get censored on all the social media all the time for no reason, rather than the bots just figuring out that I'm from a certain place, which I don't even identify with. So I don't know, mental health. Yeah, talking about kids, my kids definitely, thank God they found sports, and my son is moving to IMG professional tennis camp. So I'm glad he found that in his life as a teenager. That's really a good instinct, I think, to get into something physical rather than, anger. And that's way to channel some kind of anger, I would say. And then, girls, they suffer a lot of mental issues. There's an article in New York Times how it's the worst time for girls and social media, and, it affects them. And I can understand being a teenager in this time. And it's all about makeup trends and filters, and nothing is real. Where do you find the grounding?
Yeah, I've read with social media that people who spend the most time on it have the biggest issues with depression, because everybody, on social media never shows your worst days typically. I mean, I do have some people on Facebook, they're like, here's mom in a hospital. I'm like, really? You post that photo? But for the most part, most people are all shiny, happy, I'm on vacation. I have the perfect body, I have the perfect, spouse, here's my wedding photos, and they're never showing, what they're going through or what they've had to accomplish to get there. And I think it just, especially for somebody whose mind is maybe still forming, or a teenager who might be more impressionable, or an adult who may be more susceptible to opinions than others, they take this all in as truth, and that somehow they're less than because somebody else has more than.
Also there's a trend I notice among models now, that they post pictures crying and without makeup. all right, I get it. Like you try to bring awareness to social media, but instead of going and connecting to somebody, you actually sit in your car trying to photograph yourself crying. Like it's narcissistic. I'm sorry. Like there is a point of that. At least admit to it. Instead of going and like, connecting to somebody and hugging a tree or I don't know, whatever, you're posting pictures of yourself crying, maybe trying to look a certain angle. It's like, oh, I'm that imperfect and love me for that. But it's a trend now too.
Well, I mean, to that point, I mean, I know there's like certain celebrities, like because they're older women, they post in a bikini and everybody's like, oh my goodness, they're still rocking, like say Demi Moore at 60. She had $500,000 worth of surgery. God bless, she looks great. And maybe it was worth every penny. I don't know. But it's not like your typical mom, of a family of 4, and then all of a sudden she has the same body at age 60. I mean, it's just like the reality of it is night and day. She paid for that body. It wasn't just handed to her, it wasn't just worked for. I'm sure she maintains it. I'm sure she eats well and what have you, maybe has spiritual practices. I have no idea about her individually or anybody else who may do the same thing. But I mean, after all, like half the celebrities are like, oh, I never had anything done. And yet her face looks totally different. I'm like, come on.
The point. There's this drug that was mentioned and I swear to God, all of my friends injected. I forgot how it's called and you guys know, right?
Ozempic?
Yes. Everybody here in LA freaking injected this drug. So they said it stopped positive body kind of image because everybody is like obsessed about. And I like even Jimmy Kimmel made a comment at the Oscars, but it is true. Like every second person I see here does that. How are you supposed to like have any kind of natural, whatever, natural beauty or appreciation for anything natural?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, to me though, like, happiness and anger, it's all personal responsibility. I think we really control how happy we are and how we choose to look at something. Anything can be like a learning experience or it could be the worst thing ever that we can't get over. And, I just really think if more people just took more account of their own lives, then you wouldn't be blaming someone else or looking outside of yourself. I think all of this is about searching for something outside of yourself. At the end of the day, all we have are ourselves. I mean, it's our own life. It's our own journey. We're born solo, we leave solo. Hopefully we grow along the way, we make great connections, but we have to take accountability for ourselves and where our lives are, whether we love it or not, and whether we're a victim of nepotism or not, or marrying well or not, or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's all another level because you can have all those things and still be miserable as heck, So we choose to create, I think, as humans, a lot of times our own obstacles and our own misery. And I think that's kind of part of our lesson to really, accept ourselves. And when we do, then I think we're more probably accepting of others. That's just my 2 cents on that. And talking about not accepting others, I do have this Disney World backdrop. That's where I grew up in Orlando. Hello, DeSantis, or as Trump likes to say, the sanctimonious. So now his big thing, and what Texas is saying is, drag queens, they are corrupting our children. In addition to drag queens, they had started, critical race theory because we don't want a little white child to feel bad that maybe their ancestor did something bad to somebody who is ethnic, whether it's a Native American or slavery or what have you. Now, to the best of my knowledge, if any teacher at a school went onto a tangent about how evil little Debbie is at age 7 because of her ancestors, they'd probably be fired. So I don't think this type of concern is really legitimate. I also don't understand why we really need Drag Queen Story Hour, but I'm sure none of those parents were just surprised, like they sent their kid to school. Next thing they knew, little Johnny came back dressed in drag. I mean, I'm assuming, they took them to the event to have a story to show diversity, or to me, a little child would view a drag queen as dress up, pretend, play, and not sexualize the whole experience. And if somebody does, of course, I view it as totally wrong. On the same hand, to be like, oh, I think a lot of it is for the media. Like a drag queen is a visual. You could be like, look at how odd this person is. Look at how different they are than the norm. This is why you, middle America, may be or not better, and you want to protect your child against them. But they're also saying that they need to be categorized as adult performers, which I view as like the sex industry. I've been to drag shows. I've never seen children at them at 11 at night. If you're a parent bringing your child to a drag show where there's liquor, drunk people, maybe you shouldn't be a parent, is what I would have to say. Because I don't tend to see kids even at drag queen brunches that they have, in big cities. For that reason, you're bringing your child almost to a bar or a rowdy environment. Yes, you have the right to do that as a parent. I think that's what's questionable, not the entertainment or the drunk people around them, the fact that you, as the parent, chose to bring your child into that environment. So I think it's another way kind of like to build that anger, to build the separation that, we spoke about from, Marianne to, Bettina, you brought up these comments. What do you have to say about this? Do you think these are really concerns, real issues? Is it all just good media sound bites? And are we covering it just for the sensationalism to get ratings? What would you ladies like to say? Bettina, maybe I'll start with you.
All right. First of all, drag queens have been around since the beginning of time, even in Shakespeare's time, they didn't allow women to play any of the parts. So the men had to dress up as the women. And even like, early movies, Some Like It Hot comes to mind. It was just something that was done all the time. And it was really done because women were not allowed to be performing, but they were never considered adult entertainers. This was like for everyone to watch. It's a little crazy. And I've seen, I don't know if you've seen these, but a lot of the memes that have been coming up on my Facebook page are, they show a picture of like a 7-year-old in a pageant, like dressed to the nines, and then right next to them, a drag queen. And like, which is really worse? Like sexualizing your 7-year-old in a children's pageant, or a drag queen who's just having a good time or expressing herself in a certain way. So I don't think it's right to turn that into adult entertainment. I mean, if it is adult entertainment and it's at a bar, there's something different. But these, I think they were doing storytelling at libraries or something, which is kind of funny. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it if they're, if they're not doing anything sexual. It's just another crazy law. And it's another thing, as we were talking about, to get the society riled up, so that they'll be voted for.
Well, Bettina, I half agree again, because everything you said I agree with, except I really
agree with almost everything I tell you to do.
I miss Honey Boo Boo. I liked her being dressed up. I liked her go-go juice. I wish she was still on. But that's all I have to say about the pageants. What about you, Marianne? What do you think about all these topics?
We were going to start a pageant at one point in our career, weren't we?
We talked about it. Who has time for that?
That brings a really good point. It's interesting. Personally, I don't have any problem with drag queens. Live and let live. My whole thing is, if you're hurting another person, don't do it. If you're not hurting anybody and you're trying to bring something positive to someone's life, then I don't see a problem. For example, the same people, like I have an uncle who was in, they called it the ugliest woman pageant, and they dressed him up like a woman. He had like coconut shells or something here and like makeup and a dress. And this is in like a small rural community. And all these men, local farmers, would dress up and they would have a contest. What's the difference? I mean, if they can do it, and I don't see a problem. If let's say a school is having drag queen story time, if a parent doesn't approve, then they can opt out. They should have the option to opt out if they don't want their children around that environment. But again, I'm the type of person that I believe if you're not hurting another human being, I think the most important thing is that you're trying to bring kindness, love, and positivity where you go. So what type of person is under that makeup and under that drag? What type of person? Who is the soul inside? How are they treating other people? And another valid point you brought up, Bettina brought up, is like, I've seen the memes as well, where there's these little girls in like not very much clothes. And, if somebody's going to complain about the drag queens, what about these innocent young children that are kind of being paraded? And a lot of them don't want to be. A lot of them kick and scream and they don't want to be in pageants, because I've known several from my childhood when I was young that hated it. They were kind of forced by their parents because a lot of their parents lived vicariously through them. So I'm a very accepting person. And at the end of the day, like I said, if you're not hurting somebody, just be yourself.
I agree. And Marianne, like, and like you said, Bettina, before it used to be like, it's okay if it's a joke, like Milton Berle, or if it's a skit on MASH where like these guys are heterosexual. I think the issue is, oh, well, if they actually are sexual and they like other men, but they're dressed as a woman, now they're depraved. Meanwhile, we don't know the farmers from your pageant if they went to Brokeback Mountain afterwards with coconuts on. I mean, we don't know. They could have got back at home crying. I saw Anne Hathaway with the bottle. I know what goes on Brokeback. I wish I could quit you. But, it all has its own thing. Everything has its own meaning. What do you have to say, Eugenia?
You guys are so feisty. There's so many points. so, I empathize with anybody whose shoes I'm not in. So I don't know what people which pain they go through to be who they are authentically. And I think it takes a lot of courage. And, honestly, I haven't gone through the journey of like being in, in a society where everybody oppresses you and you finally got your opportunity. But, and I saw that it's interesting. I went to the screening of this film, this documentary about Bono and Dave Letterman and The Edge and like sort of Homecoming. And he was talking about Ireland, how they grew up all Catholic and they were not allowed. And that's kind of like where sort of his music came out, because it was a rebellion to get people united rather than separated. Like, it's an amazing film. And they had a drag queen talking, like coming back because it was so repressed, and the drag queen came back because the drag queen wanted to show a point to the society that it's okay in Ireland to be whoever you want to be. So I understand that point, and I see the humor, the suffering. I, validate the celebration of differences, but at the same time, I think children are so innocent. Their brain is not, formed fully. They're influenced so easily. And there's a point about how you, Sean, said about like sexuality and how it can be misused, and guided in kids to convince them to see things where they are probably not even seeing them. So I think we, as a society, we have to be so careful as presenting concepts to kids and which sense we're presenting them. I think it really is up to teachers and, how they present that we're all kind of are allowed to be loved, no matter who we are, for who we are. And they're both things. Like, kids can be influenced in really bad ways. And there's a lot of human trafficking problems, It's energetic because kids are the purest energy. Unfortunately, we all feed on energy. And at the same time, there are kids who are maybe born trans and, they're repressed. And for them, it's a different way. So I think it's all really comes down to intention of introducing concept to kids. And yeah, that's what I can say. I think it's really easy to manipulate different concepts.
And to shoulder on what you're saying, Eugenia, I think with like drag queens, a lot of it, I think it's just a way to make a living and to perform, because maybe they are actors or actresses, but as we all know, a lot of times you need a day job. So for them, it might be an easier way or a path to make money, to express themselves creatively. And it's not even about anything deeper, even when they're performing for an all gay audience or whatever they may be doing. And about Ireland, what I found fascinating and sad about our country is that Ireland legalized gay marriage before we did here in the US. So it's just, very interesting. So let's hear for Bono and that drag queen and everybody else. One last point that was on the news, which I found very interesting, because if the whole GOP is worried about children, part of the GOP and he's former spokesperson for the Trump administration, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is now governor of Arkansas, and she reversed child labor laws to allow children to work. So the opposite of protecting them, from, being abused or manipulated, it's to like, well, why not hire a 9-year-old and have him work the fields? What's wrong with that? But that's in, benefit of the child, according to like what she's trying to pass or did pass. Any thoughts on this policy and how the heck does it fit in with the other policies? Bettina?
I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah.
That's
a recent thing that, she had proposed.
They're
like,
obviously very hypocritical, this party, they're just trying to
And people can be in general, but I mean, like, to me, it's just like a very interesting dynamic when you have one side and then the other, and it's like, well, what are we protecting? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's just a hypocritical thing. I have nothing more to say. That's crazy and very rude to a child.
It
Yeah.
is.
And I don't know
Yeah.
the exact law or whatever, but it's essentially almost like a right to work state. It makes it easier for it to happen, is essentially what it is. I don't think it is purposely saying now we have to make children go to work. But I do think if a child was working or at a younger age, then there's really no repercussions, for that,
Okay, guys, I'm so passionate about it. Stop it. No, no, no. I have a joke. It's like, I go to the charity event. They ask how fashion helps charity, and I say fashion helps by giving jobs to the children. And that's true, I mean, being a working child, it's a terrible thing. I feel like I was robbed of my childhood. And because we were born in like third world countries and it was the only way out, okay, fine. But in America, hello, like opening doors to human labor and trafficking, slavery, like this is like, and that's why it's the worst time for human trafficking. Like I fight this so much, but it just doesn't seem like people who's in, and how corrupt these individuals might be to pass this labor. Like there's no reason for a child to work. Absolutely no reason. Get your childhood, you're the most innocent years. And trust me, like I sometimes go to therapy all the time now because I feel like I never had the childhood, and you can get it back. Like I act out now, and my husband is like, why are you acting all crazy and going to Coachella? And I'm like, well, maybe now after having kids, I feel like I want to be a kid too, which is crazy thinking, but also thinking back, going to work and laboring and like being responsible. Of course, it teaches you good things, but also it takes away the innocence and the years where you're supposed to enjoy it. And, I just am so against it. Sorry.
No, don't be. I mean, I think a lot of us as humans just have these contradictory beliefs. But what I thought about when we're talking about pageants and so forth was the modeling careers. And Eugenia, you might have something to speak about this. I remember like Calvin Klein and like Kate Moss at the time, they purposely were hiring people who looked underage. And Brooke Shields was sexualized at a very early age. I remember even like one of the movies, she's playing like a child prostitute. I don't know if it was called Pretty Baby or something. I saw like reruns as a kid, and then the Blue Lagoon, she's still a teenager and it's about her, having sex with another teenager, which somehow nobody objected to at the time, and so I just don't understand all these crazy contradictions and, maybe why it's more permissible to sexualize a girl early, but if you're doing it with like a boy or a boy dressed as a girl, oh, that's totally different.
Well, I look at my covers when I was like 13 and I understood nothing. I was like, this teenager who was shy, and I look at the way they dressed me. It was like one button out and like everything undressed and big, huge covers. Like, let's talk about sex, and I was like, oh my God, like I had no clue I was advertising that. They were buying covers with like, I'm a starry woman, don't leave me alone. I was 12. They put so much makeup. It is crazy that kids, they don't have an awareness, and maybe they like kids who are working are the kids who need the work because maybe their parents can afford it, or like they come not because they just like, oh, let's go have fun and work for 12 hours. It's just because they are put in a situation where they have to earn a living for a family. It's disgusting.
It is.
Wow.
On a happier note, I have the Disney background, and I really enjoyed the commercial for The Little Mermaid. Any thoughts? I want to see the live action Little Mermaid. I'm glad she's African American. I'm glad Melissa McCarthy plays Ursula. It looked fun. It made me want to be a part of her world. Anybody else want to see The Little Mermaid?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm with you. I'm also very glad that she's African American. Absolutely. I'm rooting for her. I think it's amazing. I've been wanting to see it since I heard about it.
She's a mermaid. She can be anything she wants. That's what I
know. I love it.
Of course.
What about you ladies? Bettina, are you going to see The Little Mermaid with me?
No, yeah. I mean, I don't remember seeing the commercial, but yeah, that sounds awesome.
During the Oscars,
yeah. I love Melissa McCarthy. She's hilarious.
All right.
And of course, diversity is the way to go, of course.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we learned that Eugenia would rather help the homeless than go to the Oscars. I would rather go to the Oscars. We also covered that, accept yourself, don't hate, love yourself. We're going to be a more loving society. Some of us are very excited about The Little Mermaid. We should not exploit children. We all love children. We're not against drag queens. Just, make sure we have a clear message, and let's all love each other. And I love you three ladies. Any final thoughts for our audience?
Really happy that, we got the Taste Awards for all the categories, right? You guys.
Yeah.
Show.
I'm glad, yeah. Rocco, send me the gift.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Thank you, Taste Awards.
Thank you.
You have good taste, just saying. So does everybody who's watching. Thank you, everybody, for watching the FNL Talk Show. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.